Hi everyone, it's Misty here. Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to my 1-year post-op video. Before we get into that though, I mentioned a couple of times that I was working on my mystery card bundles and I'm happy to say they are finished. So you're like, Misty, what is that? So I'm a card maker. If you didn't know, my alter ego is the Jollified Elf. I do have a YouTube channel. I will try to remember. No, it's already linked in the description box down below. I like to make handmade cards. It's one of the things I do. I kind of consider crafting my happy place. So I am overrunneth with cards. So I've created mystery card bundles. So there's no pictures because they're a mystery. So I have 20 bundles available. I have 2 Pride themed bundles. So all the cards in these bundles are Pride themed. They are $30 for 12 cards. So you get 12 cards and it's $30. So about $1.50 a card basically. I have 6 bundles that are all occasions, including birthday, thank you, possibly get well soon, excuse me. Some of them don't have a sentiment, so they could be birthday, thank you, whatever. So there are 6 of the all occasion bundles and they include 14 cards for $35. And then I have 12 holiday card bundles, including one that is specifically Black Santas. So all 20 of the bundles have at least one card that is hand colored by me. And then the holiday card bundles include one 5-card set. So there's a set that look either exactly the same or they're very similar in a set. And then you get 10 other just various cards that I've made throughout the holiday card series over the last couple of years. So again, there are 2 Pride that are $30 a piece. There are 6 all occasions, which are $35 a piece. And then there are 12 holiday card ones that are $35 a piece, and specifically a Black Santa one. Now I've talked about this on both of my channels, so some may or may not be available. I'm not sure. So all you have to do is email me at thejollifiedelf@gmail.com and let me know how you want to pay. PayPal, Apple Pay, Cash App, Venmo, and how many of which kind that you want. I'll have all of the information in the description box down below in case you didn't hear me or misunderstood, or if I'm talking too fast. So all of that information will be listed down below, along with the link to my 2nd channel, 3rd channel, and 4th channel. Yes, I have 4. But that's not what this video is about. Today we are looking back on my C2 to T2 fusion that I had on May 23rd, 2025, and I have a list of things that I'm going to talk about. Got a little bit of a timeline, so hopefully I stay on topic. So let's talk about why I had a C2 to T2 fusion. So I had a posterior C2 to T2 fusion, meaning they went through the back. So the main reason for this is because I have a disease called OPLL. It's the ossification of the posterior longitudinal ligament, meaning the ligament, I think it's between the spinal, like my spine, the actual disc in my spine and the muscle. I'm not really sure exactly. I'll pop up a pic of my MRI. So you can see that kind of one that looks like rock candy. That is the ligament. It's not supposed to look like that. It's not supposed to look like that. You can also see that my spinal cord is wavy. It's also not supposed to look like that. That means I have a spinal cord injury. I have a disease called spinal stenosis. A lot of people have spinal stenosis, and that is a narrowing of the spinal canal. So not only is my spinal canal narrow already, so there's not a lot of room around my spinal cord, I have this ligament that caused pressure onto the disc, and it caused the disc to put pressure on the spinal cord. It is what it is. It's hereditary. It's nothing that I did to myself. I've said before, and I'll say it again, if it was something that was because I was fat, I think I would be able to handle it a little bit better, other than it just being the luck of the draw, genetics, whatever you want to call it. I've dealt with it probably since I was a kid. And on top of that, I also have a form of muscular dystrophy called FSHD, which also, so my main symptoms has been muscle weakness. Like, the way I describe it is if you've ever moved in the heat of the summer, like it's 110 degrees outside, and you're carrying 50-pound boxes up and down stairs for 12 hours. That is the kind, like the worst arm or leg day you've ever done times like 10. That's the kind of weakness we're talking about here. So unfortunately, I have that weakness in my arms and my legs. And as you can see from the MRI, that is why I had to have this surgery. It wasn't elective. It wasn't something that I could say, yeah, I'm never going to have this surgery. It was either have this surgery or end up in a wheelchair. And I'm just not at the point in my life where I'm ready to end up in a wheelchair. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with someone being in a wheelchair, but I am not I don't think I'm physically able to get myself in and out of a chair yet. Now, could that be in my future? Yeah, it's a possibility, and that's why we redid our bathroom to be wheelchair accessible. We redid the floor in our master bedroom to be wheelchair accessible. Like, we've been making and taking steps in our house to make things wheelchair accessible for me, but I'm not quite ready for that to happen. So I went ahead and had this surgery. So that is the why. One of the things I really struggled with any surgery really, is that you can't be on an anti-inflammatory. So I take Celebrex every day. I live with chronic inflammation. Not only do I have rheumatoid arthritis, I have osteoarthritis, I'm type 2 diabetic. Like, my body is inflamed 24/7. And unfortunately, I had to be off my Celebrex, I want to say it was 3 weeks to a month. So by the time we got to surgery day, I barely walked into the hospital, and then I immediately had to get down and get in a wheelchair because I could barely stand, barely walk. I was in really rough shape. So going into this surgery, I was already in a state where I was barely mobile, and this surgery was hell on earth for me. So what they do is they go in and they remove the disc basically from your neck, and they put in rods and pins. So instead of vertebrae now, I have pins that are holding my neck together. Maybe they don't take out all the disc. Maybe they just take out part of the disc. Honestly, don't remember. I think I blocked out all of that information. So basically, I have rods and pins holding my neck. So my range of motion is about this. Now, some people have an easier time. Some people have better range of motion. It really just depends on you and your body. So I went from the operating room into ICU. She did say that happens sometimes for some people. I think I was having a hard time coming out of anesthesia. They were having a hard time getting me breathing. I am asthmatic. I did have pneumonia a couple of years ago, and that's why I didn't have surgery in 2024. So we kind of I knew going in before I went to sleep that I could potentially end up in the ICU. So that's kind of where everything started. I have little to no memory of the ICU. I remember the nurse trying to wake me up. I remember Rob asking me what I needed, and I said, will you please stay? And he's like, I was already planning to, which I had no idea he was planning on staying at the hospital with me. I thought we had talked about he was going to come home, but he ended up staying. And I remember one of the nurses, he woke me up, I think it was every 30 minutes overnight to check on me. So it wasn't a restful stay in ICU, which it wasn't the last time I was in ICU either. So it is what it is. I have a lot of trauma from my hospital stay. I had this done at Methodist Richardson. And to be quite honest, every time we drive by it, I flip it off. Which is not... We'll talk about what I would do differently in a little while. But this was the worst hospital stay I've ever had in my life. And I've stayed at UT Southwestern. I've stayed with Baylor. I stayed with St. Andrews in Oklahoma City? Like, I've had some hospital stays. This was the worst. Like I mentioned, going into the surgery, I was not mobile. And I wasn't able to sit up. It took a month. I had to get my staples out and go through some physical therapy before I was even able to sit up. Unfortunately, it was day 2 or day 3, a physical therapist and occupational therapist came in and they tried to help me up. And I just remember them pushing me up by my incision. And I don't know if it was them, I don't know if it's just the nature of it all, but my incision ripped open and nobody would listen to me. I kept telling people, my incision is ripping open. I can feel my incision ripping open. And the reason why I know what that sensation is because I had lower back surgery and I had the same issue. and no one would listen. And that was the issue I had in that hospital, was I felt like I was treated less than human. Nobody would listen to me. It felt like nobody was helping. I think it was, so I had surgery on a Friday, and I think it was either Sunday, Monday, maybe Tuesday. Again, I don't have a whole lot of memory of those first few days in the hospital. I remember that night because I literally asked to die. The pain had just gotten that much. And I've read some people who have had the same difficulty having them manage their pain. The muscle spasms, were like unlike anything I'd ever felt before. And I've had a couple over the last 2 weeks, I would say. And it just takes me back to that night where I literally asked to die, because the muscle spasms were just so bad. So if you're destined to have this surgery, make sure you talk with your doctor about pain management, because they just weren't able to manage it for me in the hospital. I also felt like they tried to get me up too soon, but again, we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. So therapy was not great. I had another therapist come in who basically was just like, he got pissed off at me because I was like moving my arms, just talking to him. Do you think I need, like, what do you think I can do to help me sit up? Is it because my boobs are too heavy? Like, what could be the cause of me not being able to sit up? And he was just yelling at me. And finally, he tried to wrench my arm behind my back. And I don't even remember screaming, but I screamed out, and the nurse came in. And she's like, oh, are you guys done? He's like, no, we haven't even got started yet. And I was just like, you wrenched my arm behind my back. And so he left, and the nurse goes, what happened? And I told her, I was like, he was rough with me. She's like, do you need pain meds? I was like, yeah, I need pain meds. It was just the worst experience. And he came back again, and I was just like, no, I cannot. So not only had my incision ripped open, but I was having, like, their therapists were just, no. Like looking back, it's hard because I was out of it so much, and Rob had gone back to work already. So I felt like there wasn't anybody there to be my voice. And that is the one thing that has been a struggle, I think, about it, is because if you've been with me through the last 10 years of my life, going through different doctors, I am someone who will advocate for myself. I'm not afraid to open my mouth and tell people what I need. But at that time, I don't think I could, because I was just so out of it. But there are pieces and parts of this day that I remember and will probably remember until the day I die. And that fucking physical therapist is one of them. So I wasn't able to set up until I had my staples out. So I went from the hospital to the rehab. Now, my second day in rehab, I started having pains in my chest area that were traveling around, going around. And I thought, is this a blood clot? Like, what is this? What are we doing? Like, I was a week post-op, I think. And so ended up back in the hospital. Ended up back at Methodist, and they just pumped me full of morphine and did a CT scan to make sure I didn't have anything. And then they asked me, where do you want to go? And I said, oh, take me home. That's all I remember until I got home. And Rob was like, I don't think this is a good idea. And I was like, oh, it'll be fine. No, I ended up on the floor. I fell onto the floor. And looking back on it, Rob's like, well, you were insistent. I was like, but I was also high. I was like, I was so drunk. I was so drunk. They should have taken me back to rehab. So they came and he had to call the paramedics back, and they got me into bed. And then the next morning I fell again because I couldn't set up and I couldn't walk. So I went into Baylor Hospital, and I stayed in Baylor Hospital for 3 or 4 days, and then they sent me back to rehab. So I had surgery on May 23rd, and I didn't get home until June 21st. Rehab was, if I had to do it all over again, I would go to rehab. That was my choice. That was my decision. I knew from having my laminectomy in my lower back and how awful that was coming home after 3 days. I knew Rob and I wouldn't be able to handle it on my own. And I'm so glad I had that forethought, because again, I didn't set up until my staples came out. And I think it was like 10 to 15 days after I had surgery when she took my staples out. So rehab was interesting. Rehab was basically a nursing home. And I roomed with an elderly lady who was a fan of Fox News. So, and then we were right by the nurse's station, so the call was going off all night. It was awful. I don't think I had a restful night's sleep in rehab whatsoever because I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up to go to the bathroom. I remember my first night there, the physical therapist came in and she's like, "What are you doing?" Because I was trying to crawl off the bed. I was like, "I'm going to crawl to the bathroom." And she's like, "You cannot sit up. How do you feel like you're going to get to the bathroom?" And I rode myself off the bed. Like, I'm going to do it. And she was like, "You're going to have to get a diaper." And I was just like, ugh. And let me tell you, nothing will humble you more than being 47 years old and wearing a diaper. It was the most humbling experience. And it just gave me a deeper appreciation for CNAs, because just they're understaffed. Nursing homes are understaffed anyway, but I didn't have one single CNA that wasn't lovely. There was one point where I was put on, we'll get to that, I'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, having to be changed was awful, but I literally couldn't sit up. Every time I sat up, I was tearing my incision. So once I went and got my staples out, I had a tear in my incision that was almost 3 inches long and 2 inches wide. And I remember lying in the bed one day and I could smell that it was infected. Like, I could smell it. And the PT came over. This was before they took my staples out. Was this before or after they took my staples out? I think it was before they took my staples out. And I was like, "I'm pretty sure that's infected." I said, "I don't know, I can just smell infection." So she took off the bandage and it was ripped. So yeah, this was before the staples came out. It was ripped and it was infected. So I had to go on an antibiotic. And when I tell you, I finally had to say, "You guys are going to have to give me a stool stopper, like something, Imodium or something," because I was just going through diapers all day long. It was awful. It was awful. But I don't know that I've encountered anybody else that has had that much of a problem with like sitting up, etc. But I feel like if they had just taken care of it in the hospital, removed that staple, redone it or something, I wouldn't have had as many issues as I ended up having. So it ended up getting infected. I was on antibiotics for a while, and then I was off of them, got the staples out. Again, I had a huge wound. We were doing wound care in the rehab, and then it got infected again. And so at that point I was like, okay, I want to go to the hospital. And the fucking director of nursing was like, "Well, we can take, are you sure you need to go? We can take care of it." I'm like, this is the second time this has gotten infected since I've been here. I would really like to go to the hospital. He tried to talk me going into a different hospital. I was like, I would really just like to go to the hospital where my surgeon is. That way they can at least look at it. And that stay was much easier. That was like June 19th, because I ended up going home from the hospital. It was infected, and I started seeing a wound care doctor who was fantastic. And I started drinking Juvian. So Juvian is a drink that's supposed to help your body rebuild collagen and help wounds heal. I was drinking that like it was Kool-Aid, and honestly, that helped. Juven, I 100% recommend it. It was fantastic. In fact, my pharmacy still had a prescription for it, and I'm having surgery at the end of June, carpal and cubicle tunnel, and I'm going to start it again 100%. Rehab was rough though. I lost so much weight because I just wasn't eating. They didn't really have any good nutritional choices for me. I was trying to be low carb because I wasn't on my Manjaro. And it was just rough. Like, they would bring just, it was bad. It was so bad. So I was like, "Can I bring protein drinks or something?" And so my husband brought up some protein drinks, and I was drinking those a couple of times a day because I was just like, I have a picture of me and I'll try to remember to post it. I had just lost so much weight in the hospital, in rehab, And it had just gotten to the point where I was just like, oh my gosh. I'd gotten down to like 300, I think, in rehab, which is the lowest adult weight I had been at that time. No, it was 301. And then it ended up getting down to 299. Now I'm back up to 330. We'll talk about that on a different day. So I did some physical and occupational therapy in rehab. But it was mostly after I came home that I started at-home therapy. So I had a physical therapist and an occupational therapist. I ended up doing physical therapy for just a few weeks. After I got home, after I had the stitches out, I was still in a collar. I stayed in the collar 6 weeks, I believe is how long I stayed in the collar. And then I was able to get out of it. One thing that I struggled with post-surgery was moving my head. I remember shaking my head no and almost going down to the floor because it made me so I just got so sick all of a sudden, and it made me so dizzy. It felt like vertigo, like I was about to go to the ground. Luckily the wall caught me. But even today I can't look down very often or I start to get really, really dizzy. But so the first month after surgery, the first month post-op was rough. I've documented it here on my channel. I know I posted some shorts, and I talked about like my getting home experience, etc. This is kind of just a general overview about what happened and what had gone on. So I did at-home therapy. I had a really great occupational therapist. I didn't do physical therapy for a while. That's where I was going with that. Once I got the collar off and I had a walker at home, I was able to move around better than I thought I would be. So the exercises that he was having me do for my legs and stuff, I didn't really feel were necessary. I was more concerned about my arm. So when they do this type of surgery, they cut through all of the muscle and all of the nerves to get to your spine. And that's where the pain comes from. It's not necessarily the surgery itself, although any surgery is painful. It's the muscles growing back together and the nerves coming back online that are the issue. So I am a little over a year post-op and I still don't have any sensation in my left trap muscle. For the longest time, I couldn't lift my arm higher than this. Like this was as high as I could get it. Now we're about right here. That's about as high as I can go. See my little bat wings. I guess they're not little, but that's really, and that was my biggest concern, was I couldn't lift my arms. And so I did occupational therapy for a good 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Like I did it through almost the end of August. And then I did it again this past January because I just felt like I'd lost a lot of range of motion, etc. So I did at-home therapy. I believe it was at 6 weeks that I had x-rays done to make sure everything was aligned. Everything was perfectly aligned. So after that, it was really just about, and that was hard. Oh my God. Because they had a bar and I had to raise my arms above my head. And when I tell you I almost threw up because I wasn't able to lift my arms up naturally like that on my own. So her having to wrench my arms up was just awful. I had a really bad experience. This is not me telling you that you're going to have a bad experience, but I feel like sometimes you see videos of people who have it super easy, and that's just, from what I've read, that's just not the norm for most people. So going into this surgery, I was promised at least 70% relief from 2 different neurosurgeons. And to be quite honest, I don't feel any different today than I did before I had surgery last April, May. I haven't regained any of my strength. I've lost more range of motion than I had before. So, but again, it wasn't an elective surgery. This wasn't something that I could just not have. It's something that I had to have. And while I have a really good therapist and I've been dealing with the trauma, it hasn't been the most positive experience. And that is really hard, because it was just like I went into this surgery, I felt like I was prepared but anxious. I really trusted my surgeon and her PA, and I just felt like her PA really let me down. I told her, I said, I have felt less than human in the hospital by the staff. I just felt like my needs and I wasn't taken seriously. No one listened to me. Again, I I had a tear in my incision that was like 3 inches long and 2 inches wide. And if someone had just listened, if someone had just believed me, I think my entire kind of process would have been much different. So there's no change. I'm having new worsening nerve pain, especially in my kind of right, it may be a trap muscle, maybe my fascia muscle, I'm not really sure. I've been having some really intense nerve pain. Nerve regrowth is awful. Now, if you're someone who has experienced this type of pain, you may or may not have had a rhizotomy. Rhizotomy is nerve ablation. They basically go in and burn the nerve to kill it so it stops sending signals. And when the nerve comes back online, sometimes that nerve coming back online is more painful than the nerve pain you had before you had the nerve messed with. You know what I mean? So the nerves coming back online, it's like, yay, the nerves are coming back online, but holy shit, are the nerves coming back online. The neuropathy, there's 2 different kinds of neuropathy. Whichever one it is has been just awful. Like I mentioned, I've had a couple of really bad muscle spasms. I had one the other day and I was just like, Rob's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I haven't had one like this since being in the hospital. Now, with that being said, I fell a couple of weeks ago. It 100% could be from that fall. I don't remember hitting my head, but my chair did fall on my head. So, and I remember just being scared that I was going to hurt my neck. So it could be from that, but it also could just be, healing. Now, the healing window is 12 to 18 months. So November 23rd will be 18 months for me. And I am hopeful that by the time we get to 18 months that I'm in a much better spot than I am today. I am hopeful, but I'm also realistic. I was promised 70% relief. I maybe have gotten 20 if I'm being generous. So, but I don't want that to discourage you from having the surgery. Again, it wasn't elective. I had to have it done. I did it. It's over with. I don't have to worry about that part again. I have other areas in my back that are going to need to be taken care of later down the road, but that's that. So things I would do differently. You need someone to be there until you're released to be your advocate. Like I said, my husband went back to work not long after I had surgery. He just had to, and it just is what it is. But looking back, I wish he had been there, especially when the therapist came in, because I would have had somebody else see what had happened and would have been able to be like, hey, no, we're not doing that. You know what I mean? Like, been able to kind of help me through all of that. And unfortunately, he just wasn't there for that. And again, no blame on him. We just didn't know. We didn't know what it was going to be like. So looking back or being able to plan for the future, that's one of the very first things I would talk about. I would do what I'm calling an aftercare plan with my surgeon and my doctor, maybe the hospitals if you need to. I went into this barely mobile, and for them to expect me to follow the same exact guidelines as they do with every other patient was just asinine on their part. I would ask for an extra day. So if they're like, we're going to get you up on day 2, I'd be like, I would rather get up on day 3 or possibly day 4. I understand the reasonings why, but I need a couple of days because I wasn't even on my anti-inflammatory for 6 more weeks after that. And I have rheumatoid arthritis and I get our immunosuppression infusions, and it had been 8 weeks since my infusion. So my body was going through it, and moving was the last thing it could do. So I would want to create an aftercare plan that took all of those needs in mind. That way I would feel like I didn't have to worry about starting physical therapy too soon or them trying to get me up too early. And I would also put in there, I know what it feels like to have an incision ripped open. So if I'm telling you the incision's ripped open, at least please look at the incision. I guess that's my biggest issue with it. I just wasn't heard. I just wasn't seen. I just wasn't heard. So I would want an aftercare plan that kind of laid all of that out. And I don't think that's something that's unrealistic to ask of your doctor and ask of the hospital. I understand why there are guidelines, but everybody is different. And if I can barely walk into the hospital and need a wheelchair almost immediately, I would think that it would be okay if we pushed everything back one day. So I would definitely create an aftercare plan that talked about all of that. Just what to expect afterwards, and how we can modify it to fit my needs, because my needs are different, than everybody else's. I would pick a different rehab. I would try to find a rehab that's just a rehab and not necessarily a nursing home in a rehab. I think there's one close to us. Honestly, I picked the one closest to our house, just because I wanted it to make it as easy on my husband as possible. And that's why I had it when I had it. That's why I had it Memorial Day weekend. He had a long weekend. I didn't want him to have to take a whole lot of time off work. So I was trying to plan it that way, but in the end, I really should have picked a rehab that was more of a rehab than a nursing home. And again, the only other thing I would do differently is have an aftercare plan. Just walking into this surgery. This is a major surgery. I'll put up a picture of my incision after it healed. We're talking about here to the middle of my shoulder blades. Now, some people are able to have an interior one where they just get a little incision on their neck. No, that's not what I had. That is not what I had. So I posted what I'm packing in my bags for rehab in the hospital. And I would say, I have a stuffed cow. It's up here. I would have some kind of comfort item, whether it's a blanket, whether it's a stuffed animal, whatever you need. I would have some kind of comfort item with me. I had my own grippy socks, strawberry shortcake. Everything I took with me was strawberry shortcake. Listen, I went into this knowing that it was going to be rough, and I wanted to make sure that I was surrounded by whatever made inner 5-year-old Misty happy. So I had some grippy socks. I stayed in a hospital gown, so I really didn't need anything other than that. I had my own blanket that I took. I bought headphones, like a head wrap headphones. Those were fantastic, because I could put it over my eyes and have it in my ears so I could fall asleep with something to listen. Extra long cords. I had my iPad. I had my phone. Like I said, I had headphones. What else? Water. I had my own water cup because I drink water like a fish. You've seen me drink 3 or 4 times during this video. I'm on several medications that cause dry mouth. What else? Ooh, I can't. Oh, a neck pillow. Thank God I bought a neck pillow, because the way I stayed in the collar until I got my staples out, and then they put me back on the collar. So I was in the collar most of the time. So I had a neck pillow that kind of helped me have some support behind my head. So it wasn't just my neck leaning backwards. That helped a whole bunch. And I used that pillow until I was able to sleep in the bed comfortably or sit up comfortably. For at home, I suggest having a walker. I already had one. Sometimes you can rent one. Sometimes the hospital will send you home with one if you ask. I would also have a soft brace. So you can get one off Amazon. I'll try to remember to link the one that I got down below. But it helps you when you're in the shower. One of the things that I still struggle with it is my head will feel heavy. Because again, there's not a whole lot of support. There is support, but there's not a whole lot of support. And I find myself with my head leaning down. So when I was in the shower, when I didn't have to wear a brace, I found that I still needed a brace. So I would wear a soft brace to take a shower. If you need to keep your incision covered, they make long sheets of what's called Tegaderm. It's what they put over an IV when you're in the hospital. I'll link the ones that I bought. Again, you can put that over your incision to keep it from getting wet. I can't really think. Again, the Juven, I can't recommend the Juven enough. I got it off Amazon. Again, I'll have that link down below. I think the main thing to remember is that it's a major surgery. I thought I was going to heal and be back to normal within 3 months. No, no, that just didn't happen. And again, it's going to be different for every person. And this video is not meant to scare you. That's not what this video is about. This video is to give you a really realistic understanding of how a surgery went for someone who already lives with chronic illness and chronic pain. So just make sure that you talk about how they're going to manage your pain. I was taking like 15 milligrams diazepam because I kept having panic attacks. Like I was taking methocarbamol for orally for muscle spasms like every 3 to 4 hours. I was on my hydrocodone. I was on pregabalin. Like I was on a lot of meds to try to mitigate the pain. It is a very painful surgery, and if you're someone like me, part of the reason why it was so painful is because I have so much weight in my upper body that was kind of pressing gravity. Gravity is the reason why I had so much pain. Gravity. So yeah. So I've said so a million times. I apologize. I don't want you to be scared of this surgery, but I want you to go into it with your eyes wide open. Because I felt like I was prepared, and I still, no, looking back, I was not prepared. So try to come up with an aftercare plan with your surgeon and your PA and the hospital, whoever you need to talk to. Make sure you have somebody with you who can be your voice, who can be an advocate for you to make sure that you're getting the health care that you need. Make sure you have something of comfort. Like I said, I had a stuffed strawberry cow that I got from Build-A-Bear. She has glasses on. I changed her outfit because looking at her made me have trauma. So that's why she's up on a shelf and not right in front of my face. You know, have some like grippy socks if you have your own special, gown, hospital gown, etc. And if you're someone like me who already lives with chronic illness and chronic pain, you may want to consider going to rehab, especially if you don't have someone at home to help you. It was probably the best idea that I had. And I asked for that, and I chose that because I didn't want my husband to have to deal with me trying to be at home. And I can't even imagine how that would have gone. I can't even imagine. So at the end of the day, just make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that you're, advocating for yourself, and just know that, yeah, it's going to be painful. It's a major surgery, but not everyone has a hard time like I did. Not everyone has a hard time like I did. So I hope if you have this surgery that it's successful. I hope that you get some relief. And I hope this video was the tiniest bit helpful. That's the whole reason why I wanted to put it out for anybody who is attempting to have the surgery. I wanted you to have a realistic kind of story from someone who struggled with it to kind of balance out all of the, oh yeah, this was the easiest surgery I've ever done. And nah, bitch, nah, no, nah. Don't go into this thinking that it's an easy surgery. Go into it eyes wide open and hope that, it's easier for you than it was for me. That is my hope for you, for sure. I don't want anybody to have to experience what I went through. So yeah. So anywho, that's it. If you're interested in a mystery card bundle, be sure to reach out to me. This is going up probably on either May 30th or May 31st. So I don't know what's available and what isn't, but feel free to email me. Again, I will link the specific things that I used at home in the description box down below. Did I have to heat and ice it? I will say one thing that I have that I use now is I have a shawl heating pad. So it goes over my shoulders and it helps keep heat back there. I have some ice packs. Again, I will link everything that I used consistently and have used consistently since having surgery down below. Now, they came and fit me and showed my husband and I how to do the collar before I had surgery. I know a lot of times that happens during surgery or after surgery. So that was something that we did that was a little different. So, yeah. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate you. If you're someone who has been around through this whole ordeal, and you can see I'm moving around a lot because sometimes it's really hard for me not to lean back and have some support behind my head. That is another thing that's an issue I sometimes have. But I just want to say thank you. There are some of you who've been with me since this channel started 10 years ago, and there are some of you who've been with me since the surgery. I really do appreciate you. it can be very isolating when you have this kind of surgery. It can feel like you're all alone. It can feel like, and if you don't have anybody around you who's ever experienced it, it's really hard to talk to somebody. I'll have a different update for you guys later in the week. We'll talk about kind of what's going on in my brain about getting this 30 pounds off, the medication change, all of that good stuff. So if you haven't already, I hope you'll consider subscribing, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.